There we go.
Hello, everyone. My name is Karen Morgan. I'm a volunteer with AARP Maryland, and I'm also a member of the Executive Council. And I'm here today to bring you another in a series of conversations during protectweek.org. And I also just want to tip the hat to World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, which happens every year on June 15th. So I think it's particularly significant that we're talking about fraud, how people can become vulnerable to fraud, and the ways in which we can protect ourselves. Today, we're going to focus on romance scams and being victimized by family. And I have with me today awesome guest, Kate Kleinert, who is a national spokesperson for AARP. And she wanted me to let you all know that she is a member of the Lay Franciscan Order. She takes in hospice dogs. Wow. She loves gardening and reading. And she is no ordinary person. I will just say that, but you will hear her story in a minute. And then my other guest is Greg Sessick, who is Director of Statewide Administration for Adult Protective Services in the Department of Human Services for the state of Maryland. He has been with the Department of Human Services for 8 years. He actually started out as a music major, and see what that gets you? He got a real job. So there you go. So we are so happy to have you here, and your information is very important. So first, let me start out with you, Kate Kleiner. You are a key person with AARP, but you were victimized by a romance scam. So tell me something about that.
Well, I've been widowed for a little over 12 years now, and I've never been looking for another romance. I still feel married to my husband, so I was not looking for this at all. And I never accept friend requests on Facebook. I never do. But one day, almost 2 years ago, this very good looking man sent me a friend request. He had read my profile, told me he loved gardening and dogs and everything just like I do, and that he really was interested in getting to know me. And it must have been a bad day because I clicked accept and accepted him as a friend. And it was kind of nice in the beginning to have someone in my life again that I could chat with and what have you. But he quickly moved it to having me put an app on my phone so that we could call each other. And he told me he was a surgeon in Iraq working through the UN. And he seemed like too good to be true. And it wasn't long before he needed money for something. He couldn't have money in Iraq. It wasn't safe to have his bank account there. It just, the whole, which sounded feasible to me. So every time he asked for money, there might have been a little bit of mistrust in me, but there was always a good reason for him to be asking. And he certainly is very good at what he does. He's very polished, said beautiful things to me, really knew how to make me connect with him. And before long, I was out buying gift cards and sending the information to him. And he was going to come here. We were going to get married. He wanted to have a life with me. I was out looking at houses, and he showed me his bank account, which had all this money in it. So as soon as he got here, he was going to repay me. So I felt like I trusted him. Mm-hmm. But of course, the night he was supposed to fly into Philadelphia, I waited all night long, and he never showed. And at that point, I was out $39,000, which was about all I had in the world then. So it's been a very difficult climb out of this hole for me at my age to try and make up. You don't have as many years now to make up that lost money, my retirement fund, my 401k. It's really a tough situation. If someone asked me if I would fall for this, I would have said absolutely not. But here I am.
But I just want to say, thank you for sharing your story, because I think that shows an incredible amount of courage on your part. But I think what this also points up is this notion of how when people are victimized, they feel shame, they feel
Yes.
terrible. It can happen to anyone, but it wasn't your fault. And when people are victimized by these criminals, because that's what they are, it is not their fault, it's the criminal's fault. And if people don't take anything else away from Protect Week, I really hope that they understand that the criminals are the ones who are screwing up,
Hmm.
not you, not the honest people who are just trying to do the right thing.
Yes.
Um, so let me ask you, Greg, what should people do if they notice that someone is being financially exploited? Like if a friend noticed that there was something going on that didn't seem right with Kate, what would a family member or a friend do? Who should that person call for help?
Thank you, Karen. First of all, thank you, Kate, for sharing your story.
You're
That's
welcome.
very, very brave. And I'm glad you pointed out, Karen, that in situations like this, you should not feel shame or
Mhm.
embarrassment. It's not your fault. Um, some of the signs to look for um, when you're concerned about someone is when suddenly someone is having trouble managing their finances or paying their bills, or for the first time they speak about, I'm not sure I have enough money for this. If that's new behavior, then there might be something to
Mhm.
be concerned about. In those instances, there are, things that you can do. Start by having a conversation. People drop hints because perhaps they want to talk to you about something. I'm
Mhm.
experiencing this. I don't quite know how to bring it into the conversation, but I've dropped a hint. Follow up on that. Have a conversation as a friend or a family member around that. What's happened? Tell me what's going on. Sometimes this involves financial exploitation in families or with friends. Um, and that's a very difficult situation to be in, because then this involves two people that you care about, the
Mhm.
person who's being victimized and a family member, and what's going on in the situation. Those are probably two conversations that need to occur. So at Adult Protective Services, or APS, we do investigate for abuse, neglect, and exploitation, including financial exploitation of vulnerable adults. And in Maryland, a vulnerable adult is anyone 18 years old or older who cannot meet their activities of daily living. Now that's up to us to determine. If you're concerned about someone, certainly make the call to report to us. And we have an easy number to remember. That's 1-800-91-PREVENT, or 1-800-917-7383. If the vulnerable adult, or if the person is determined to be a vulnerable adult, we would open an investigation. If not, we'll do our best to make a referral for who this should be reported to.
Okay. So Kate, let me ask you, when this situation happened and you realized you were out so much money, were you
Mhm.
actually able to get any help from the police?
None, none at all. I was even, I think there was more abuse there than anywhere. I called the local police. They didn't answer back. I called the state police and I got a woman officer who answered the phone. And I was so relieved, thinking it would be easier to tell a
Mhm.
woman what had happened. And of course, my voice was shaking and I started to cry. And she said, "Why are you calling here?" Just like that. And I
Wow.
was shocked. And she said, "Honey, you gave him that money. This is not a crime."
She
So
didn't
then
call you
I
honey,
did.
did she, Kate?
Yeah, she
Tell me
did.
she didn't
If
call
I
you
could
honey.
have gone through the phone, that would have been the last person she called honey, I think.
Good
I
grief.
was shocked. I didn't know where to go after that.
Wow. So Greg, what resources are available to assist a family member if you think something's going on?
That's a very good question. So as I said, making a report to APS if you suspect abuse of a loved one or of someone in your life. Um, If APS determines that this is financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, we will open an investigation. Now, due to confidentiality, we can't reveal any information to the reporter about whether an investigation was opened or what we find.
Mm.
However, if APS indicates that a vulnerable adult has been financially exploited, and we have the evidence to indicate that, we'll do our best to work in local jurisdictions with law enforcement to make a referral. This is what we found in our investigation. Those are relationships that exist in Maryland in each jurisdiction between APS and law enforcement. Some other things you can do to protect yourself. I know that there are several shred events happening across the state. Make sure to shred your old financial records, including bank statements. And I don't know about you, but I think there's not a day goes by that I don't get 2 or 3 sign up for this credit card offers.
Yeah.
Shred those. Also important to in preventing, designate a trusted person as a power of attorney for person and for property. I believe you can find information about that at the Attorney General's website. And again, I say a trusted person. Make sure that you're aware of what rights you're giving to a person that you trust. Very important, but it's a good thing to have in place. At the Protect Week press conference on Monday, the Attorney General spoke about lock your credit report if you're not applying for a loan, and you can do that by calling the credit bureaus. That's a really good tip, I believe.
It's actually called a credit freeze, but you're absolutely right, Greg. You can freeze your credit. You can thaw it when you need to interact with a business, and then you can refreeze the credit, and it's all free. So thank you for bringing that up. So Kate, let me ask you: do you think that there's been any improvement with the response of law enforcement in these situations since this happened to you, or do you think that things haven't really changed that much?
I don't think things have changed at all. The only place I really got help was on the fraud department, in the fraud department at AARP. And the man who answered my call there was extremely nice to me and kept telling me it wasn't my fault, which was the first time I had heard that. But the police, I think, need to be educated about this sort of thing and how devastating it is to people, and that you don't know where to go, and to be a little kinder when someone calls and presents this problem.
Or a lot kinder. And don't say honey.
Right.
Don't say honey to someone who tells you that they feel like they've been victimized in a romance scam. The last thing they want to hear is that they're being called honey. Oh my goodness. So let me ask you, Kate, then again, emotionally, how did all of this affect you? What got you to AARP?
Well, honestly, losing all of my money is more devastating than I can even begin to tell you. I've got stories that would make your toes curl about things that have happened in the past 2 years where I had no resources whatsoever. But even worse than that was losing this love that I thought I had gained again. And I had to go through a grieving process again, which was very hard on me. I was looking forward to this life, that things were going to be so much better. I was going to have a family of my own, and it was just going to be wonderful. And that was taken away. So AARP, the man at AARP asked me if I was willing to tell my story, and that has opened up just a huge opportunity for me. I've done podcasts for them. I've even contacted the state representatives and have offered to go out to senior breakfasts and stand there and talk to the folks. I've done a few of them so far, because people need to be educated. and need to find out how we can handle this. I've testified before the Senate, and it was my one opportunity to speak to the senators, and I did, when
Hmm.
they asked me what I thought could help. And I said, standing there and saying, go download a book and you'll be fine, to people in my age bracket or older, is not a help whatsoever. They don't know what downloading is, let alone how to do it.
Right.
So that's not an answer. Get out to where the people are and get this message out there.
Hmm. Absolutely. Thank you. So Greg, it seems like scams are around every corner, wherever you look.
Mhm.
Some scary scam is out there just ready to take you. So do you think there's a rise in financial exploitation? And even if there isn't, or if there is, what are some things that we can do, people like Kate and me and everybody else who's watching, what can we do to protect ourselves?
Mm.
Thank you, Karen. We know that financial exploitation is on the rise. I heard someone from the Maryland Bankers Association give a quote last week that this far, so we're halfway through this year, and nationally, this is $1 billion loss, financial exploitation, that
Mm.
is. So in Maryland, APS has been investigating for financial exploitation for the last 10 years. Uh, in that 10 years, financial exploitation investigation and remediation now accounts for more than a quarter of all of our work. So
Mm,
we know that
Mm.
financial exploitation is on the rise. I mentioned some of the things that you can do, including filing a report. When we do become involved in someone's life, someone who's a vulnerable adult, and we indicate that this person has been financially exploited, um, we try and work with the person to mitigate the risk that's going on. We don't indicate and say this person has been exploited and walk away. We try to stay involved to say what's happening here. How can we help
Mhm.
to how can we continue to help this person, which might include putting some things in place, working with them so that they can get a power of attorney to help them, and things like that.
Mm.
mhm. Um, and Kate, you just mentioned that there were long-term effects. Can you describe a little more what sort of effects there were on you financially after this crook entered your life?
Well, I'm still suffering financially, because I was sending him my money and living from my own credit card. So they're
Mm,
maxed out, and now, trying to pay them back with no income is tough. I've got my Social Security, but my husband's life insurance is gone.
mhm,
What I had left of that, my savings, my 401k, it's very difficult. So, if my sisters are watching, I apologize. But recently, my electricity was turned off again,
oh,
which they're going to be upset to hear about. But I don't like telling people that stuff. So, I just couldn't meet that bill. I couldn't do it. And the electricity was turned off. My phone is turned off frequently. Um, they're the far reaching effects that it's 2 years now. And I'm
mhm,
still trying to dig a way out of the hole. So it's not something that ends overnight. And
right.
if I may, I would like to say about the older group of individuals who get that granddaughter phone call in the middle of the night. Your grandson is in jail. He doesn't want his
Mhm,
parents to know. And of course, it's a crapshoot, but somebody will more than likely have a grandson or a granddaughter that might be in jail, and they get up and wire money somewhere. They don't want their adult children finding out about that, because then the adult is going to say, Mom, I told you, you are not
mhm.
making good decisions. You can't live on your own anymore. So
Ugh.
they are keeping that quiet and suffering alone. So there's just an awful lot out there that needs some help.
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up because that happened with my mom. I mean,
Oh my gosh.
I'm 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 the attorney, I'm the fraud expert. She got the call saying that her grandson was,
Mhm.
in trouble, I don't know what kind of trouble, but she went and got money. She didn't say a word to me. And I never would have said to her, because working with AARP, I know that it wasn't her fault.
Yeah.
But I would have helped. But she never said a word to me. She didn't say a word to
Mhm.
her son, her grandson's
Yeah.
father. He just happened to find out later. And then, it's like, oh my goodness, no, don't do that. And my nephew was fine. He
Yeah.
was great. He was in school where he belonged,
Yeah.
but these people, they don't care, and
Yeah.
they have no compassion whatsoever. They just want your money.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So, well, let me move on to questions. We're getting questions and comments in the chat. I mean, and people are saying it's great that AARP could help you, Kate,
Yes.
and those resources that AARP has are completely free. And just to reiterate again, the fraud hotline is 1-877-908-3360. And if you know of someone who's being victimized by the crooks, or if you yourself are being victimized by the crooks, you can call
Mhm.
this number. It's completely free, and people will help. And
Yes.
I promise they won't call you honey. So there. Um, so one question that we're getting, Kate, is how did you stop communication with the scammer?
Well, the night that he was supposed to be coming to Philadelphia to meet me and spend Christmas together and what have you, and he didn't show up, he called in the morning and said, no, I'm sorry. Another man called in the morning and said that Tony had been arrested in Philadelphia, that when he went to get his suitcase off of the carousel, that the police stepped forward and arrested him. Coming from Iraq, there were drugs in his suitcase. So now he needed $20,000 for bail. And I was finished then. I didn't have $20,000 anywhere to get, but I was crushed. Still, I was like, well, can I see him if he's in Philadelphia? Can I go see him or whatever? No, no, no. And the story just started to unravel at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So the more it unraveled, I had to be honest with myself and say, look, girl, this is not working out here. This is not true. And
Mm-hmm.
that day was a tough one to get through. I cried a lot.
It had to have been devastating. I can just imagine. And that brings up another question. And maybe Greg, you can weigh in on this. What if you're emotionally connected to the abuser,
Mhm.
and you still want to protect them from the law, from the penalties that they so richly deserve?
Mhm.
What happens in that situation? What can you do?
That's a great question, which is sometimes why folks are reluctant to ask for help. Um,
Mm.
as I said before, sometimes people give you a hint that something is going on. Follow up on that conversation. In regard to families, um, that's very painful, but if you can help, have a conversation. An adult child who is financially exploiting a parent, for instance, and a sibling finds out. In APS, we tend to get involved with the whole family in
Mhm.
situations like these. But before that, have a conversation if you can. What's going on? We know that mom's having trouble managing her finances. There's
Mhm.
some money that's missing. What do you know about this? First of all, we want the abuse to stop.
Mhm.
Um, when you report, we we will get involved, as I said, if the person is a vulnerable adult. Um, what happens after that, I can't make assurances of in terms of not reporting to law enforcement, because if a financial crime has been or we believe a crime has occurred, part of our responsibility may be to notify law enforcement. Um, Sometimes that is what's needed to get
Mhm.
someone to take back control of their life. and to stop financially exploiting, painful as that is.
So then would you recommend, in spite of the negative experience that Kate had when she talked to law enforcement, would you recommend that people call law enforcement to report this situation?
Yes, I would. As I said, APS investigates for a vulnerable adult, so someone who's 18 years old or older. If we find that a person does not meet our definition of vulnerability, we'll do our best to make a referral to this is who you should contact. In the case of someone who is being financially exploited by someone in a foreign country, for instance, that would be one type of report. For someone involving a family member, that probably would be APS that would respond. In other situations, it would be the police that you should contact. We can try and help you navigate who to report to.
Well, let me ask you this. If Adult Protective Services does find an exploitive situation, does APS get involved in imposing penalties, or what are there penalties imposed at all on the abuser? What happens if you find that a person really is doing this?
So the role of APS is to investigate. We investigate for abuse of vulnerable adults, and in doing so, we need to have enough evidence to indicate that this person has been financially exploited. That is the appropriate role for APS according to the law. We do have partnerships in local jurisdiction with law enforcement to make recommendations for those indicated reports that we find. So that's going to be the role of APS.
Okay. And one other question, if you know about a son or a daughter who might be exploiting their parents or living off their income, Human Services does help with that. That's like a major, mission for Adult Protective Services, is to help mitigate that situation.
That's correct. The person at the center of the investigation will have to meet our definition of vulnerability, which means that someone 18 years or older who cannot meet their activities of daily living. If that's the case, then it's likely that we would open that investigation and become involved.
So what's the most common type of abuse among families that you've come across in your experience, Greg?
So it's complex. We're living in difficult times. In the example that Kate gave of her personal story, we do see romance scams. That does happen. Children and grandchildren who are having a difficult time, perhaps battling addictions and taking money from a loved one. We know that is happening as well. As I said, APS tends to become involved with an entire family when we get involved in abuse, neglect, and exploitation investigations.
So, Kate, let me ask you, given what's happened, are you on social media? Do you participate in social media platforms?
I do, but to a very much narrower range of people. So I don't get those friend requests from outside any longer. A younger person showed me how to put those limits on my Facebook account. So I'm very limited that way. And still, I'm not out there looking for, anything, but people tend to find you. And one thing we haven't discussed is that all of this was going on during the pandemic. And I think people were much more vulnerable during that time. The elderly were stuck in the house by themselves. And in my case, I think if my sisters and I had been physically in touch. We certainly kept in touch over Zoom and the phone and text and what have you. But if we had been physically in the same room, they would have known something was up with me.
Mm-hmm.
They would have known
Yes.
in a
The
heartbeat. So,
pandemic just made
but
things so much
we weren't
harder.
able to see one another. So, that complicated things.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and we're also getting comments in the chat, just again thanking you for sharing your story. I will say that I just think it's incredibly courageous to take what is a devastating situation, one that continues to this day, and to use it to help people. We are so thankful to you for doing that, and we're thankful to you, Greg, because of the services that you provide. I mean, you go where angels fear to tread, and wading into family abuse. It's, oh my goodness, that's a scary situation, and it seems like no good can come of it, and even in kind of functional families, things can go south pretty quickly if one person starts having problems.
Yes.
All it takes is one.
Absolutely.
Right.
So, well, with that, I am going to wrap up this conversation. But Kate Kleiner, thank you so much. We are so grateful to you again for sharing your story and for battling fraud, because it's real. So, and we can be victimized, but we can also become fraud warriors. And you are an amazing example of that. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm grateful for this opportunity. Thank you.
And Greg, thank you again for your service, helping families, one family at a time, all over the great state of Maryland, because especially during the pandemic and during these crazy times, a lot of families need help. So we are so grateful to you too. And so with that, I'm going to wrap up this conversation. Again, this is happening during Protect Week, but you can tune in at any time. And today is World Elder Abuse Awareness Day. If you want to see what else is happening during our foray into Protect Week, then go to www.protectweek.org, and you can see we're going to have a teletown hall later on this afternoon. We will have other conversations about all things fraud and how to protect yourself. So thank you so much.
Thank you.